I am on the night shift in Loudoun County, out in Ashburn where the data centers sit in long rows behind fences and trimmed grass. The buildings look calm from the road. Blank walls, a few loading bays, security lights, and the steady hum you stop noticing after a while. Inside it is always loud. Air handlers pushing cold air, fans in racks, pumps moving coolant, alarms that chirp even when nothing is wrong. Most nights the job is boring in a way that makes you tired. You watch dashboards, you walk rounds, you answer a ticket, you swap a failed drive, you sign off a contractor, you drink burnt coffee. You go home when the sun comes up. Tonight starts boring too. At 11:47 p.m., I'm staring at the same screens I always stare at. Facility management on one monitor, network operations on another, a third showing the ticket queue, and the fourth with a camera grid. My partner Luis is eating chips too loudly and pretending it is funny. Security is doing the usual rounds. The building is staffed light, just enough bodies to keep everything legal and safe. The rest of the company is asleep, and that is the point of a night engineer. You keep the place alive while everyone else pretends the world is stable. The first thing that feels off is not an explosion, not screaming, not a headline. It is time. The clocks drift. I see it in the logs before I feel it in my gut. One system says it is 11:51. Another says it is 11:49. A third says it is 11:53. Time service is supposed to keep everything in line. It is boring plumbing for the internet. When time goes weird, everything that depends on coordination starts acting stupid. Security tokens fail. Certificates get rejected. Databases argue with each other about what happened first. Luis says, "Time sync is trash." And he laughs. Still casual. He thinks it is an upstream issue, some external provider having a bad night. I pull up a different feed. Same problem. I pull up another. Same problem again. I check our internal time sources. One is reachable, one is not, one is responding with nonsense. I do not say nonsense out loud. I do not want to be the guy who panics early and becomes a joke later. Then the routing alerts hit. Border gateway protocol flaps, prefixes withdrawing and reappearing. That is normal in small doses. The internet is a messy agreement between companies. Stuff wiggles. Tonight it is not a wiggle. It is a seizure. Paths we never use become the best path. Paths we always use vanish. Latency jumps. Packet loss spikes. Every major transit graph turns ugly at the same time. We have customers in this building who do not care about our feelings. Banks. Healthcare. Cloud workloads that feed half the apps on half the phones. I start calling out checks in a low voice, mostly to keep myself steady. Core links up. Edge link 1 degraded. Edge link 2 up. East peering unstable. Luis stops crunching chips. His eyes go to the screen, then to my face. He sees my expression change. He stops joking. At 12:06 a.m., the first power event hits, not here but close enough to matter. Our utility feed status changes. A momentary sag, voltage dip, then recovery. It lasts less than a second. The kind of thing you log and move on. But the sag happens again. And again. 3 dips in 4 minutes. The building rides through it on the uninterruptible power supply without even breaking a sweat. The screens do not flicker. The lights do not dim. The gear does what it is designed to do. The power dips are a message, though. Power grids do not stutter that way for fun. Big motor starting can do it. Lightning can do it. A substation switching event can do it. 3 in a row, clustered, and then the routing chaos above it, and the time drift underneath it. I feel my stomach tighten. I think about those Ukraine grid attacks people talked about years ago. The ones that made the news in the cybersecurity circles. Remote switching, coordinated confusion, call centers flooded. The part that always stuck with me was how normal it looked at first from the outside. I step into the small radio room we keep for emergency comms. It is not glamorous. It is a rack with a few hardened radios, a speaker, a microphone, an antenna feed, and a binder full of procedures nobody reads unless there is smoke. We keep it because the county emergency management likes it, because insurance likes it, because somebody learned a lesson the hard way long before I got hired. The gear is old enough to be simple. Simple gear survives weird nights. I key up and listen. There is a local noise floor, some static, faint voices, then a sharp burst, and then a string of transmissions that sound stressed. Not organized. Not a neat dispatcher voice. People stepping on each other, trying to get through. I do not say the name of any channel. I do not say any frequency. I just listen and pick out what matters. Someone in Fairfax reports elevators stuck across multiple buildings at the same time. Someone else says a hospital generator test failed and the transfer switch did not transfer. That is a phrase that makes my spine go cold. Transfer switches are boring until they are not. Luis appears in the doorway. He holds his phone up. No service. He tries again. Same result. Wi-Fi calling would normally save him, but the internet is coughing. He says his wife is home with their kid in Sterling. He tries to keep his voice steady and fails. I tell him to stay in the building for now, because outside we know less. Inside we have water, light, security, and a roof. At 12:20 a.m., the building management system throws a storm of warnings. Not just one sensor, not just one controller. Entire groups of points go offline, then come back, then report values that make no physical sense. Chilled water supply temperature jumps 20 degrees in a second, then drops. A valve reports 100% open and 100% closed in the same timestamp. A pump claims it is pulling negative flow. That is not a broken sensor. That is control logic losing its mind or somebody making it lose its mind. I have seen equipment fail. It fails messy but honest. This feels dishonest. A lie being told by the building. I look at Luis and I do not sugarcoat it. I tell him somebody might be inside the control network. And if somebody is inside, the goal is not to annoy us. The goal is to make us do the wrong thing, at the wrong time, under pressure. He swallows and nods. He stops touching anything without asking. I call our on-call manager. It rings and rings, then goes to voicemail. I call our security operations number. Busy. I call our corporate incident line. It answers with a recorded message that the line is experiencing high volume and to use the online portal. The online portal is barely loading. It feels like trying to call for help in a storm while the phone is melting. I go back to the microphone in the radio room, and I make a decision that would get me written up on a normal day. I start talking. Not a polished announcement. Not a corporate statement. Just a human voice. I say I am a night engineer at a data center in Ashburn. I say systems are failing in a pattern. I say power quality is unstable and the internet routing is unstable. I say if anybody is hearing me and has a line into a hospital, a water utility, or a dam control room, tell those people to assume remote control is compromised and to put hands on physical controls where possible. I keep it short. I do not tell anybody how to break anything. I tell people to stop trusting remote screens. A voice comes back strained, from somewhere north. A guy says he is at a small hospital in Frederick. He says the electronic medical record is gone. The phones are half dead and the nurse manager is doing paper triage. He says the generator started, but the fuel gauge is reading empty and he knows the tank is not empty because he saw a delivery 2 days ago. I tell him to ignore the gauge. I tell him to physically check the day tank level if he can do it safely, and to watch the exhaust, listen to the generator tone, smell for raw diesel. Gauges can lie. Engines are harder to fake. Luis is on another radio in the next room, trying to reach County Emergency Management directly. He gets a short response. A tired voice tells him they are getting flooded, and that multiple substations in Northern Virginia are tripping in sequence. The voice says the trips are not matching weather. No storm, no lightning, no tree lines down. It is switching. Deliberate switching. At 12:42 a.m., we lose one of our upstream links entirely. It drops hard, no graceful degradation. The monitoring board goes red. The building still functions, but customers start screaming through automated alerts. The ticket queue begins to fill with outages, latency complaints, failures. Luis and I split duties. He takes network triage, I take facility and power. Power dips hit again, and this time the building rides them. Then the utility feed drops completely. It is not a brownout. It is a cut. In the same instant, the uninterruptible power supply takes load, and the generator start sequence kicks off. This is a normal event in this industry. It is also the moment when you find out whether your normal is real. The generators do start. I hear them through the walls, that deep rolling vibration that shakes your ribs if you stand too close. The transfer switches clack over. The building stays lit. The servers stay up. I exhale a breath I did not know I was holding. Luis looks at me and gives a tiny nod. That nod is not confidence. That nod is gratitude that we did not die in the first punch. Then the alarms begin. Generator 2 reports overspeed for half a second. then clears. Generator 3 reports low oil pressure, then clears. Generator 1 reports coolant temperature spike, then clears. 3 separate large engines do not all hallucinate at once. That is control telemetry being pushed around. Somebody is trying to force a shutdown. That is what overspeed and low oil pressure trips are meant to do. Save the engine from self-destruction. The safety systems exist for real reasons. If somebody can trigger them remotely, somebody can kill a generator without setting foot in the building. I tell Luis to lock down remote access pathways to the generator controllers if he can, physically isolate if it is possible. He asks if I want him to pull network cables. I say yes. He looks shocked for a second because pulling cables is what you do when you are out of options. I tell him we are out of polite options. He runs. I grab the binder and flip to manual control procedures. The paper smells old. The pages have grease marks from people before me. I head for the generator room with a flashlight, even though the lights are still on. I want light I control. The generator room is hot and loud. Ear protection sits by the door. I put it on. I do not want to be deaf by morning, assuming morning exists. In the generator control panel, I see alarms flicker. Some are real, some are not. I do what the procedure says. I put the controllers into a mode that requires local confirmation for critical trips where it is allowed. I do not bypass safety. I do not disable overspeed protection. That would be suicidal. I do tighten the rules so a remote signal cannot fake a catastrophic condition and force an unnecessary shutdown. It is a thin line and I feel it. I am not a hero. I am a guy trying to keep machines running while somebody tries to make them stop. Back in the operations room, Luis is sweating. He has physically disconnected the building automation network segments that talk to the generator controllers and transfer switches. He says the monitoring went blind in parts. I tell him blind is fine if the engines keep spinning and the lights stay on. We can measure reality with our senses for a while. Screens are optional. I go back on the air and explain what just happened in plain words. I say we lost utility power and we are on generators. I say uninterruptible power supply buys minutes, not hours. I say, if a hospital tells you the uninterruptible power supply will last all night, somebody is lying or somebody is confused. Most of those battery rooms are built to carry load until generators stabilize, not to replace them. I say if you are hearing a building claim, everything is fine on battery, you have a short window to make choices. A woman comes on, shaky, from Arlington. She says she is in a high-rise and the water pressure just dropped. The lights are on, but elevators are dead. She asks what to do. I tell her to fill containers with water now. Any clean container, because water pumps need power and pressure. And if the building goes on generator, the generator might not feed the booster pumps. I tell her to conserve phone battery, avoid candles near anything flammable, and find stairs that are not locked. I tell her to keep a towel by the door for smoke. I do not say it in a dramatic way. I say it the way you say it when you have been in enough buildings to know fire is always the second disaster. At 1:15 a.m., news filters in through fragments. Not a full broadcast, not a clean update, just bits. A guy in New Jersey says he is seeing multiple water treatment alerts and a boil advisory being pushed, then revoked, then pushed again. A dispatcher voice from Maryland says the emergency call system is failing intermittently. Another person says a dam in Pennsylvania is dumping water unexpectedly, sirens going off, then stopping. I do not confirm what I cannot confirm. I challenge what sounds exaggerated. I ask for specifics. County name, nearby road, whether the siren was the standard flood warning tone or a car alarm. I keep my questions tight because the air is crowded. I tell people to watch for pattern. Conflicting instructions, automated messages flipping, screens lying in ways that endanger humans. I say the best information right now is direct observation and trusted neighbors, not a screen that can be remote controlled. A guy with a calmer voice comes on from somewhere overseas, heavy accent, says he is in Rotterdam, and the port logistics systems just died. Trucks are stuck, gates will not open, cranes are stopped, and the harbor traffic control is using handheld radios. He says he hears similar from Hamburg. That lines up with what I know about how ports run. Everything is scheduled. Everything is barcode and database and routing. If you knock out those brains, the muscles freeze. Luis gets a short text through an internal corporate channel that still works sporadically. It says multiple data centers in Frankfurt and Dublin are also on generator, and one site reports a control plane compromise across building automation. That phrase is corporate speak, but it means what it means. Somebody is inside. We start rationing our own resources. Not food, power, fuel. Data centers burn diesel fast when they are carrying full IT load and cooling it. I pull up the fuel monitoring, then I ignore it halfway because I do not trust it. I send security to physically verify the tank site gauges with flashlights and cameras. Security does it without complaint. The guards are not dumb. A guard named Marcia comes back on the radio and says the physical gauge shows near full and the sensor feed is reporting half. That mismatch tells me the sensor is being manipulated, or the feed is being spoofed. I tell Luis we need to prepare for fuel deliveries not happening. If dispatch systems are compromised, tanker trucks might not roll. If payment systems are down, vendors might refuse to move. If roads are chaotic, even willing drivers might not get through. I say it out loud because saying it makes it real. Luis nods and looks sick. At 1:40 a.m., the first loud boom happens. Far away, a deep concussion that you feel more than hear through the building. Everybody in the operations room freezes. We stare at each other. I hate that moment. It is the moment when the quiet cyber part becomes the physical part. The moment when what is happening stops being a nerd problem and becomes a human problem. Security starts pulling up exterior cameras toward the horizon. You can see a faint orange pulse in the distance, then darkness, then another pulse. It could be a substation transformer failing. It could be a gas line. It could be something worse. I do not guess. I just log it and keep the building stable because our building staying stable is the only thing we can actually control. I go back on air and I say, this is coordinated. I say it is not random crime, not one hacker kid. I say it feels staged across systems that normally do not fail together. Time service, routing, building automation, grid switching. I say I do not know who is doing it, and I do not care who is doing it right now. I care what it does. I care how long backup power lasts when resupply breaks. A man comes on from a hospital in Washington, District of Columbia. He says the emergency generator is running, but the oxygen system alarms are going off, and the building automation is telling him the medical gas room is overpressure. He is a respiratory therapist. He knows what normal looks like. He says the readings feel wrong. I tell him to treat the alarms as untrusted and get someone to the physical gauges and relief valves. I tell him to assume the false alarm could push staff to shut a valve that should stay open. I tell him to keep patients breathing first, argue with screens later. Luis gets a call from his wife through a weird path that barely works. It is not clear if it is cellular or some internet hop that survived. He steps out, takes it, comes back pale. He says Sterling is dark. Whole neighborhoods. His wife heard sirens, then silence. His wife says the neighbor's generator started, then stopped, then started again, then stopped. Luis asks me if that could be someone remotely messing with home generators. I tell him home generators are usually simpler, but many newer ones do have network features and cloud monitoring. I say I cannot promise anything. At 2:10 a.m., we lose municipal water pressure at the building. The building has stored water, but not for long. We have restroom tanks, some reserve, but no real supply. Data centers do not keep swimming pools of drinking water. The cooling system is closed loop. It is not a fountain. We are not built for siege. We are built for uptime. Marcia from security says she is hearing on her handheld that a nearby gas station is already being cleared out. Not looted in a movie way, just people filling cans, arguing, getting mean. I tell her to keep the fence line watched and to keep the front gate locked. I do not want desperate people seeing this building lit up in a dark county. Light is a beacon. It draws curiosity first, then it draws hunger. I take a moment and call my sister in Reston. The call fails. I try again. Fails. I text. It does not go. I feel that helpless anger rise, the kind you swallow because it does not fix anything. I go back to the microphone and I keep talking because the air is the only place my voice still reaches. I explain backup power in plain terms for anyone listening in apartments, clinics, small towns. I say if a building has an emergency generator, it usually feeds life safety circuits first. Exit lights, fire pumps, one elevator if it is configured, some lighting. It might not feed every outlet. It might not feed heating or cooling. I say hospitals have more robust setups, but even hospitals depend on fuel deliveries. I say diesel fuel can last a couple of days under full load, sometimes less. I say if you can reduce load safely, you stretch fuel, turn off non-essential lights, stop trying to run every machine. A voice comes on from Atlanta, and it sounds scared but controlled. The man says his spouse is a nurse, and the hospital there is diverting patients because their networked infusion pumps are freezing. He says the pumps are showing errors and the biomedical team is trying to switch to manual settings. That is exactly the kind of failure cyber people warned about for years. Devices that are safe when they are dumb become dangerous when they are smart and remotely managed. I tell him to ask the nurse staff to keep paper records, to label everything with time and dose in handwriting, and to slow down if possible. Mistakes multiply when systems flicker. Around 2:40 a.m., we get our first confirmed report of physical damage caused by control compromise. A utility worker in West Virginia, voice rough, says a hydro plant upstream did a gate operation out of sequence. He says the control room saw commands they did not issue. He says the operators hit local override and cut remote control. He says they think it saved the structure. He also says someone is going to die downstream because warning systems did not trigger correctly. He sounds angry at the world, not at me. I do not argue with him. I ask him one question. Did local override work? He says yes. I tell everybody listening that local override is your friend. If you run an industrial site, if you have a panel with a physical key switch, turn the key. If you have a local-only mode, use it. If you have a way to isolate remote commands, isolate them. I am not telling anyone how to attack. I am telling people how to stop trusting remote control when remote control is compromised. Luis hands me a printout he made before the network got worse. It is a map of regional substations and transmission corridors we depend on. He says multiple nodes are dropping in a pattern that looks like load shedding, but the command sequence looks wrong. I tell him this is bigger than our county. I tell him it feels global. He asks me if this is war. I tell him Cyberwar does not need a declaration. It just needs coordination. At 3:10 a.m., the cell network near us collapses fully. Even the weak bars vanish. Some phones still show a ghost connection, but nothing rotes. We still have internal systems and a portion of the internet through whatever path remains, but it is thin. We are living on scraps of connectivity, and scraps can disappear any time. People start showing up outside the fence. Not a mob. 3, then 5, then 8. You can see them on camera, silhouettes under the streetlights. Some point at the building. Some hold up phones, maybe filming, maybe just trying to find signal. Marcia tells them to leave through the loudspeaker, and they do not. She repeats it. They wander off slowly. One person stays and stares. I tell Luis we might need to go dark. That means shutting down non-essential external lights, reducing our visible signature, even if it makes the security team nervous. The building will still run. The servers do not care about exterior lights. We do care about being a target. Luis agrees. We coordinate with security and kill most of the perimeter lighting except what is required for cameras and safe movement. As the exterior dims, the horizon glows in patches. Fires, maybe. Substations, maybe. Something in the distance is burning steadily, not flashing. That is not a break or trip. That is a sustained fire. The radio traffic gets heavier. People are no longer asking what's happening. People are asking how long. How long until power returns? How long until water returns? How long until fuel runs out? Those questions are brutal because there is no clean answer. I give the only honest framework I have. I say if this is coordinated, the recovery is not a simple repair. You do not just flip one switch back. You need trusted control, verified firmware, verified operator consoles, verified communication paths. You need people who are not exhausted and not under threat. I say that takes time. A man comes on from London. He says the underground stopped, signals froze, and evacuation is happening on foot through stations with emergency lights. He says the payment systems are failing, and supermarkets are turning people away because registers are dead. He says police are trying to keep order, but the radios are overloaded. He sounds stunned that a modern city can become analog in minutes. I tell people listening in the United States to prepare for the same basic reality. Cash might work for a short time, then it might not. Cards might fail. Fuel pumps might not run without power. Water towers will drain. If you can safely store water, do it. If you can safely store food that does not need cooking, do it. Do not start a fight over it. Just be prepared to exist without automation. At 3:50 a.m., our generator fuel reading on the digital system suddenly drops to 10%. Security checks the physical gauge again. Physical gauge still reads near full. That is a direct attempt to make us panic and shut down loads, maybe to trigger a cascade in our customers' systems. If you can knock out enough data centers, you knock out cloud control planes, and then you knock out the ability to coordinate response. That is a strategy I hate admitting is smart. We stop trusting all digital telemetry that we cannot verify physically. We do more rounds. We use handheld thermometers. We listen to engines. We look for leaks. We watch for vibration changes. We are back to being mechanics, not screen watchers. The building feels more honest that way. Harder, but honest. A local firefighter comes on the air, breathy. He says they have multiple calls for smoke in high-rises, and most are from people using grills indoors. He is frustrated. He says do not do it. He says if you start a building fire tonight, there is not enough water pressure to fight it properly, and the trucks cannot get fuel reliably. He says he is not trying to scare anyone. He is trying to stop the dumb stuff that kills neighbors. I back him up. I say no charcoal indoors, no propane indoors, no generator inside a garage, no running a car in an enclosed space. I keep it blunt. I do not soften it. I say carbon monoxide kills fast and quiet, and tonight emergency response is stretched thin. At 4:20 a.m., the first confirmed hospital outage in our region hits the radio. A woman in Chantilly says her father is on dialysis, and the clinic called to cancel because power is unstable and water systems are compromised. She is panicking because dialysis is not optional. I do not pretend I can solve it. I tell her to call any hospital that can still take patients, but I also tell her to prepare for long waits and chaos. I tell her to keep the father warm, hydrated as allowed by his medical restrictions, and to bring paper copies of medical information if she has them. Screens might not be accessible. Luis sits down hard in his chair. He looks older than he did at midnight. He says he got a short message from a friend in the National Guard. The friend says the armories are receiving partial activation orders, but the orders are conflicting, and some systems that validate orders are down. Luis asks me if that means martial law. I tell him the truth. It means confusion. Confusion is more common than the movie Authority. The pattern spreads on the air. Someone in Sao Paulo says the water pumps in a district are cycling weird, starting and stopping, causing pressure hammer. Someone in Tokyo says the train system is running limited manual dispatch with delays, and the digital signage is blank. Someone in Berlin says the traffic lights are out across multiple neighborhoods and crashes are stacking up. This is not one country. This is infrastructure being hit where it is most automated and most interconnected. I start explaining the idea of fail-safe without using fancy words. I say many systems are designed to fail into a safe state. Valves close, breakers open, pumps stop. That prevents damage, but it also stops service. If an attacker can force fail-safe repeatedly, the public sees it as random failures, but the effect is the same as physical sabotage. No water, no power, no transport. The safe state becomes a weapon when it is triggered at scale. At 5:05 a.m., we get a call from a guy in Richmond who says a fuel terminal system is down and tanker trucks are not loading. He says drivers are sitting, waiting for authorization that never comes. He says some drivers are leaving and going home. He says the terminal manager is trying to do manual paperwork, but the safety interlocks still depend on network control. That sentence hits me hard. The world built interlocks for safety and then tied the interlocks to networks. Safety becomes fragile when the network is hostile. I tell listeners something I have never had to say on air before. I say if you have a generator and fuel, treat that fuel as precious. Do not run the generator all day. Run it in planned blocks to charge batteries and power essential tasks, then shut it down. A generator running lightly loaded can still burn fuel and can still wear. A generator can also attract attention with sound and exhaust. Nighttime use is risky in some neighborhoods. You need to balance needs with risk. The sun comes up, but the county stays dim because so much is still out. Our building is still alive. The machines do not care about sunrise, but humans do. I feel a small shift in mood inside the operations room, a sense that we survived the night. Then the next wave hits. At 6:15 a.m., multiple utility feeds in our area come back for less than a minute, then drop again. That kind of cycling is dangerous. When utility returns, transfer switches can move load back. If it drops again, everything has to transfer again. That stresses gear. It can create inrush currents and trip breakers. It can kill weak equipment. It is a way to cause damage without blowing anything up. We put the building into a mode where it will stay on generator until we decide otherwise, even if utility comes back briefly. That keeps us stable. It also means we are betting on our fuel stock, and betting that utility power is not clean yet. I tell Luis to document everything. Paper logs, pen. The kind of record that does not vanish when systems reboot. I go back on air and I say the grid might flicker. I say do not assume flicker means recovery. I say if you are in an apartment and the lights come back for 10 seconds, do not immediately run every appliance. Wait, pick one essential load. Keep breakers manageable. If you overload a weak circuit during unstable return, you can start a fire or burn a device you need later. A voice comes on from a water plant operator in Ohio. He sounds exhausted and angry. He says chemical dosing pumps started feeding at the wrong rate for a short period before he cut them. He says the readings on the supervisory control and data acquisition screen were not matching what his handheld test showed. He says he caught it in time. He says if a smaller plant with fewer operators misses it, people get sick. That is the moment it clicks for a lot of listeners, I think. This is not just power and internet. This is water safety. I tell people to listen for local boil water advisories, but I also tell people not to rely on one automated text that might be spoofed. I say confirm through multiple sources if possible. Talk to neighbors who work in utilities. Look for physical signs. Water smells different. Water is cloudy, pressure drops, pressure surges. If water feels wrong, treat it before drinking. Around 8 a.m., the first organized response voice cuts in, brief and clipped. It sounds military, not dramatic, just efficient. The voice says there are verified compromises of multiple control systems and that critical infrastructure operators are being directed to local control. The voice does not give details. It gives a simple instruction. Disconnect external network access to industrial controllers where possible, preserve logs, maintain physical safety. I do not know who the voice belongs to. I do not ask. I just listen and repeat the practical parts in my own words. Luis finally gets a clean call through to his wife. He puts it on speaker for a second so I can hear. Her voice is tight. She says the grocery store opened and then closed because the freezers are warming. She says people are arguing. She says she is staying home. She says the kid is scared. Luis tells her he will come when it is safe. He hangs up and wipes his face with his sleeve and looks embarrassed. I tell him not to be embarrassed. I tell him that is normal. I keep broadcasting because the volume of callers is insane and most of them are lost. Some are helpful. Some are spreading rumors. I challenge the rumors. Someone says nuclear plants are melting down. I say that is a big claim and it needs evidence. Nuclear plants have multiple safety layers and many fail safe into shutdown. I say that does not mean there is no risk. It means do not spread panic without verification. Someone says there are bombs. I ask where, what time, what source. The caller cannot answer. I cut it off and move on. By late morning, the cyber part is still active, but the human part is catching up. People are driving without traffic lights. People are stuck in elevators. People are trying to get family members out of hospitals. Police are dealing with petty violence that grows when water and fuel vanish. The air feels heavier, even through a radio. At 12:30 p.m., the first major dam incident is confirmed with location details. A caller from near the Susquehanna says sirens did not activate, but water release surged and flooded a low road. A bus got stuck. People climbed onto the roof. He says local firefighters rescued some, but one person was swept away. He says he watched it. He sounds numb. I do not have a clean response for that. I tell him I am sorry, and I mean it. And I tell others near rivers to move away from floodplains if they can. Not tomorrow, now. Inside our building, the cooling load is steady. Our customers are still running full tilt because the world is leaning on cloud and data more than ever. People are trying to get information, send messages, coordinate. That means our racks are hot and our chillers are working. That means fuel burn is higher. We start asking customers to reduce non-essential compute. Some will not. Some cannot. I do not blame them. When your services keep hospitals scheduling and banks clearing, you do not just shut off. At 1:45 p.m., we get a direct threat outside, not words, action. Someone tries the pedestrian gate. The camera shows a man in a hoodie yanking the handle. The lock holds. He backs up and kicks it. The lock holds again. Marcia and another guard move toward him, not aggressive, just visible. The man points at the building and yells, but the audio does not pick it up. He leaves when he sees armed security. That was a test. That was a probe. I tell Luis we might not be able to stay here forever. I go on air and I tell people something else that is not comforting. I say lit buildings in dark neighborhoods become targets. I say if you have power, keep a low profile. Cover windows at night. Do not advertise. Do not run loud music. Do not brag online if online still works. People get desperate fast when the basics fail. A caller from Phoenix comes on and says the hospital network there is running on a degraded internal system, but their vendor remote support is down, and the electronic locks in one wing are stuck. They have patients trapped behind doors that require badge access. Staff is trying to break doors open. I tell them to look for mechanical overrides and to check with facilities teams. Many locks have a key cylinder for fire code. If keys are missing, bolt cutters become medical tools. That sentence feels insane, but it is also true. By the second evening, we have been on generator for almost a full day. Our fuel situation is still physically stable, but resupply is unknown. Utility power is still unstable. It comes and goes in brief bursts. Those bursts feel hostile now. We stop treating a return as a blessing. We treat return as a trick until proven otherwise. I get a message through a remaining internal chat that a facility in Ireland experienced a fire when their building automation commanded simultaneous start sequences that overloaded a switchgear section. That is not supposed to happen. Interlocks prevent it, unless the interlocks are compromised or misconfigured. The message is short and full of gaps. People are tired. People are typing with shaking hands. I tell listeners the most important thing. Assume the first recovery wave will be messy. Power return can burn devices. Water return can pull sediment and contamination. Communication return can carry misinformation. When systems come back, treat them gently. Use them for essentials. Give them time to stabilize. I keep repeating that because repetition is the only way it sticks when people are scared. Late that night, around 10 p.m., we hear gunshots in the distance. Not a war, not constant. Just a few pops, then silence. The security cameras catch headlights speeding past. Marcia says local police are not responding to non-life-threatening calls anymore. They are triaging. That is the polite word. It means if you are not dying, you wait. Luis asks me if I think this is the end of modern life. I challenge him, because despair is also a kind of ego. Thinking the world ends on your shift is a dramatic temptation. I tell him the world is big. I tell him some regions are probably doing better. I tell him some islands and remote grids are still stable. I tell him the question is how long the restoration takes in dense, automated places. I tell him we might recover in weeks or months, or we might get stuck in a cycle where systems come back and get hit again. I tell him it depends on whether the attacker still has access and whether defenders can rebuild trust in control systems. On the air, a man from Kiev comes on. He sounds exhausted in a way I recognize from people who have lived through long crisis. He says parts of the city have outages, but people are adapting fast because he has seen worse. He says local utility crews are switching to manual operations and limiting automation. He says people are sharing water and charging stations, and some neighborhoods are organizing watchers at night. He does not sound heroic. He sounds practical. I tell him I respect that. I tell listeners that practicality beats panic. The third day is when the then everything does part happens. We get the first verified refinery incident on the radio. A caller near the Gulf Coast says a chemical plant vented, then ignited, and emergency sirens are confused, turning on and off. He says the sky is lit for miles. He says the smell is awful. He says authorities are telling people to shelter, but the alerts are contradictory. That is a sentence that repeats across the world now. Contradictory alerts. I do not describe flames in poetic terms. I do not make it cinematic. I describe what I know. Industrial fires create toxic smoke, and wind direction matters. If you are downwind, you close windows, seal gaps, stay low, use wet towels if you have them, and you do not run ventilation that pulls outside air. If you have to evacuate, you do it early, before roads jam. In our county, the first large local explosion happens at a substation less than 10 miles from us. The cameras catch the flash. The building shakes slightly. The utility feed does not return after that. That substation is now a dead anchor. That changes the math. We are on generator until we are not. We decide to reduce load. Not a full shutdown, but controlled shedding. Non-critical customer workloads get warnings and then get cut if the customer cannot confirm need. We lower cooling set points in a way that is safe for equipment but reduces compressor load. We shut down office areas. We shut down decorative lighting. We are turning a hypermodern building into a survival machine. I go on the air and I say I am watching fuel burn. I say if we keep running at this pace, we have days, not weeks. I say that is true for most places on backup. Backup is meant to bridge you to restoration, not replace a national grid. Callers ask me if there is any safe system left. I challenge the premise. Safety is not a label you stick on a thing. Safety is a set of choices under constraints. I tell people the safest systems right now are the ones that can operate locally without remote dependence. Gravity-fed water sources, manual valves, mechanical locks, paper records, local radio. I say modern convenience is fragile when control is hostile. Luis gets another message from his National Guard friend. The friend says some units are deploying to protect water plants and substations, but coordination is patchy because communication networks are unstable. The friend says to keep eyes open for misinformation that tries to lure responders into traps. That sentence makes my skin crawl. Weaponized misinformation during a crisis is not a theory anymore. Outside, the fence line gets tested again. This time it is a small group with flashlights trying to see inside, trying to find a weak spot. Security warns them off. One throws a rock. It hits the wall and bounces. Then a bottle. It shatters. Marcia tells me her team can hold for now, but if a larger crowd comes, this becomes ugly. A data center has valuable stuff inside, even if most of it is useless to a hungry person. The perception of value is enough. I keep broadcasting, but I also start preparing to leave. I hate that. The building feels safe. It is concrete and steel and controlled air. I know it. I understand it. Outside is chaos, and my sister is out there. Luis's family is out there. My phone still cannot reach mine. I decide I will not die in a perfectly cooled room while my family guesses whether I am alive. I tell Luis I'm going to try to get to Reston at first light. He says he is coming too, to Sterling. We do not make it dramatic. We make a plan. We grab basic supplies. Water from the building, some food from the vending machine stash, flashlights, batteries, a first aid kit, reflective vests. We coordinate with security so we do not look like intruders leaving. We print maps because digital maps are unreliable now. Paper does not crash. Before we leave, I go on the air and I say I am moving. I say I have been broadcasting from a data center and I might lose the signal during travel. I say I will keep talking as long as I can. I say if you run a critical facility, switch to local control and trust physical readings. I say if you are a civilian, store water. Avoid fire hazards, conserve fuel, and stay calm enough to think. We drive out at dawn, the roads weirdly empty in some stretches and packed in others. Traffic lights are still mostly out. People treat intersections like negotiations. Some do it carefully. Some do it aggressively. We pass a crash where two cars are nose to nose and nobody is helping because nobody knows if it is safe to stop. That is what the collapse looks like. Not movie collapse, just the slow loss of trust between strangers. I keep the radio mic open in the passenger seat and talk between turns. I describe landmarks so people can orient. I say where roads are blocked. I say where I see smoke. I say where I see lines at gas stations that are not moving because pumps are dead. I say if you have a car and you are low on fuel, do not idle for comfort. Comfort is expensive now. Near Herndon, we pass a small clinic with a handwritten sign taped to the glass. No power, no patients. The letters are thick, angry strokes. A few people stand outside arguing with a staff member who is gesturing helplessly. We do not stop. We cannot fix it. Stopping would just add bodies to a problem. A man comes on the air from the town in Indiana. He says his local water plant switched to manual and is fine, but the regional hospital is failing because their vendor-controlled systems are locked behind dead networks. He says the hospital has power but no functioning digital access controls. No access to medication dispensing cabinets that require authentication. That is the sick joke of this kind of attack. You can have electricity and still be crippled because the world tied basic functions to remote validation. Luis drives, eyes hard. He does not talk much. I can see his hands gripping the wheel tight. We take back roads to avoid the main corridors. We see fewer people, but the people we see look more tense. Some carry baseball bats. Some sit on porches with rifles across knees. I do not describe weapons in detail. I just note the posture. The posture says nobody trusts anybody. In Reston, I find my sister's apartment complex. The parking lot is messy. cars parked crooked, some left running with doors open, abandoned in a rush. I do not know what that means yet. I feel my throat tighten. I keep the mic open and say where I am, then I cut transmission for a minute because I need both hands and I need quiet to listen. My sister is there. She opens the door after a long pause, holding a kitchen knife she is embarrassed to be holding. She drops it when she sees my face. She is tired. Her building lost water for a day. She has been boiling what she can on a camping stove on the balcony. She has been hearing weird automated alerts on her phone that do not match what neighbors are seeing. She has been sleeping in short bursts because the hallway is full of strangers from other floors, because the elevators are dead and people are moving around more. I do not sit and talk for long. I tell her to pack. I tell her we are going to Sterling, to Luis's place, because it is lower density and his wife has family nearby. I tell her I do not know if that is safer, but I know staying in a big building with dwindling water and unpredictable strangers is risky. She does not argue. She just starts moving, grabbing essentials, stuffing a backpack with documents, medication, water bottles, a hoodie, a charger she cannot use. Then she stops and laughs once, sharp and bitter, because the charger is useless. Then she keeps packing. Back on the air, I talk again. I say I reached family and I am relocating. I say I am still hearing infrastructure failures on the band. I say more dams and pumps are switching wrong. I say hospitals are the hardest hit because modern hospitals are giant computers with humans inside. I say if you have an elderly neighbor, check on him. If you have a medically fragile person, do not wait for official instructions that might not come. We head towards Sterling. The roads are worse now. More people are out, more tempers. A man stands at an intersection directing traffic with a reflective vest, not a cop, just a resident trying to prevent crashes. That is one of the few hopeful things I see, and I do not dress it up. I just note it. Humans will sometimes do the right thing, even when systems fail. Then we hit the part where everything explodes for real. A natural gas pressure regulation station a few miles off our route vents loud and then ignites. We see the flame from a distance, hear the roar, feel the heat even through the car windows as we pass at an angle. People scream. Cars stop in the road. Some reverse into each other. Somebody honks continuously. I keep my voice steady on the mic and tell people to move away from the fire, not toward it, and to avoid downwind smoke. I say do not rubberneck. Rubbernecking gets you trapped. Luis swears under his breath. Not at the fire, at the fact that it is happening at all. My sister starts crying silently, wiping her face and trying not to make noise because noise feels dangerous now. I do not comfort her with lies. I tell her we are moving, we are staying together. We are going to keep making decisions based on what we see, not what we wish. We reach Sterling and Luis's house is intact. His wife hugs him hard, and then hugs my sister because humans do that when words are not enough. The kid clings to Luis's leg and will not let go. The neighborhood is tense, but not violent yet. People are outside in small groups, sharing information, showing each other battery radios, comparing notes on which streets are blocked. I set the radio back up in the living room near a window. I keep broadcasting, but now my voice is lower, because this is a home, not a hardened building. I tell listeners the situation is evolving into phases. First, digital disruption. Second, power instability. Third, water and fuel logistics collapse. Fourth, physical incidents from misoperation and human conflict. I say we are somewhere between phases 3 and 4 in a lot of places. I say the next part depends on whether responders can regain trusted control or whether the attack persists. A caller from Montreal comes on and says the city is managing with rolling outages and manual traffic control, but a large data center there had to shut down after fuel deliveries failed. He says the city still has power in many areas, but the internet services are degraded. That fits what I've been thinking. Regions with strong local generation and less dependence on long supply chains might stabilize faster, while dense regions that depend on constant coordination will struggle. I challenge one more dangerous idea I keep hearing. People keep saying, if the internet is down, the attack is over. That is false. The internet being down can be part of the attack. It can isolate defenders. It can keep people blind. It can push society into rumor-driven decisions. I say if you are offline, you do not relax. You tighten basics. Water, food, safety, community. You do not wait for a magical reset. On the 5th day, A fragile kind of order starts forming in pockets. Some utilities regain stable control by cutting remote access and running locally. Some cities get partial power back and keep it by isolating from wider grid automation, sacrificing efficiency for stability. People adapt to paper, to local radio, to community boards. At the same time, other places fall apart completely because their systems were too interdependent. The world splits into islands. I keep telling the same truth over and over because repetition beats fear. Backup power is limited. Water is life. Fire is the silent killer when responders are stretched. Trust physical reality over unverified screens. Be careful with strangers, but do not become a monster. Do not shoot someone over a rumor. Do not burn down a building to protect supplies. Every stupid act multiplies the damage the attacker already caused. At some point, my voice gets hoarse. The radio battery pack we are using is low. Charging options are limited. The neighborhood generator runs only in short blocks because fuel is scarce. Luis and I take turns talking, and when I am not talking, I'm writing notes on paper. Locations, patterns, reports that seem credible. If anyone ever asks what happened, I want something better than vibes. I want a record. On the seventh night, I get one more message from the old data center. Marcia says the building is still on generator, but security had to repel a larger crowd, and the company is planning an evacuation. She says she does not know where she will go. She says to stay safe. That is the whole world in one sentence now. I speak into the mic one last time that night, and I do not try to sound brave. I say I am tired. I say a lot of people are dead already from things that never needed to happen. Contaminated water, fires, medical device failures, floods from wrong gate operations, violence over fuel. I say this is what coordinated cyberwar looks like when it targets infrastructure. It starts silent and clean, and it ends in smoke and grief. Then I say the part that matters most. I say recovery is possible, but it will not be a flip of a switch. It will be slow trust building, verified systems, local control, human routines that do not assume automation. I say if you are still alive, you are part of that recovery, even if your job is just keeping neighbors from lighting grills indoors and sharing water safely. I stop talking for a while and listen. The air is crowded with people trying to find each other, trying to report what is real, trying to ask for help. Some voices will vanish. Some will keep going. I do not know where this ends. I know what it is right now. Ordinary people trying to use simple tools to survive a failure that was engineered to break coordination. After a few minutes, I key up again, because silence does not help anyone, and I still have the power for now. I tell people to slow down and stop chasing every new rumor. I say the fastest way to get hurt in this kind of collapse is to run on secondhand panic. One neighbor says a bridge is out, and suddenly 1,000 cars pile onto a back road that cannot handle it. One post says water is poisoned, and suddenly people drink from ditches. One voice says troops are coming, and people walk into the streets looking for a rescue that never shows. I say treat information the same way you treat a weird sensor reading. Verify with more than one source, and trust your eyes more than a forwarded message. I tell people to pick 3 priorities, and stick to them. Safe water, safe air, and basic security. Everything else matters after those. If water is uncertain, do not waste energy arguing about politics on the radio. Fix water. If smoke is in the air from a substation fire or an industrial burn, do not keep windows open because it feels cooler. Keep your lungs working. If the neighborhood is tense, do not go wandering at night just to see what is happening. Night turns small problems into injuries, and injuries into death when hospitals are broken. For water, I say it plain, and I say it twice. Clear water can still carry bad stuff. Cloudy water is worse, but clear is not automatically safe. If you have tap water, and pressure is steady, and the water looks and smells normal, keep using it, but store some anyway, because pressure can drop fast. If pressure is dropping or the water looks off, treat it before drinking. Boiling works if you can do it safely. A hard rolling boil, then let it cool in a clean covered container. If you cannot boil, use unscented household bleach if you have it, and only if the label says it is plain bleach with no fragrance or additives. Use a small amount, mix, wait, and if it still smells strongly of bleach, air it out before drinking. If water is muddy, let it settle and filter through clean cloth first. A cloth is not magic. It just removes larger particles so the disinfectant can do its job. I add a warning because I keep hearing people do dumb stuff in emergencies. Do not mix cleaning chemicals. Do not pour random pool chemicals into drinking water. Do not drink water from decorative ponds or storm drains unless you are truly out of options and you treat it aggressively and accept the risk. I say a stomach infection can kill a healthy adult now because dehydration gets dangerous fast when clinics are closed and pharmacies are dark. If someone starts vomiting or has diarrhea, the priority is fluids. Small sips often. Oral rehydration matters more than pride. Salt, sugar, clean water, measured carefully. Too much salt can hurt. Too little does not help. For air, I talk about smoke and carbon monoxide because those are the killers that do not care how tough you are. If you run a generator, run it outside, far from windows and doors. Not in a garage, not in a basement. Not on a balcony that funnels exhaust back inside. If you smell exhaust indoors, shut it down and move air out. If you use a camp stove, crack a window for ventilation and keep combustibles away. If you are using candles, do not fall asleep with them. The fire department is not coming fast right now. A small flame becomes a full building fire in minutes, and in a high-rise with low water pressure, it becomes a death trap. For power, I tell people to stop imagining batteries as infinite. Phones are not the only thing you need to charge. If you have a power bank, ration it. If you have a car, charging off a car is possible, but idling burns fuel, and fuel is a weapon now. Charge in short blocks. Turn off the car. Keep the tank above half if you can, because gas stations might not pump even if fuel is in the ground. If you have solar, do not brag about it. Keep it low profile. Shade it if you need to. A visible panel becomes a reason for someone to knock on your door with a demand. I talk about refrigeration because people forget food safety when they are stressed. If your fridge warms up, do not keep opening it. Every open dumps cold air. If you have meat and dairy and it sat warm for hours, it is a gamble. Smell is not enough. Cooking can kill many bacteria, but not all toxins that can form. If you are unsure, eat shelf-stable foods first and treat questionable refrigerated food as last resort. If you have a cooler and ice, use it for medication first, then food. If somebody in the house needs insulin or other temperature-sensitive meds, that becomes priority one. I also say something people do not want to hear. Sanitation is going to get ugly fast if water and sewer systems are unstable. If toilets stop working, do not keep flushing until the bowl overflows. Set up a plan. A lined bucket, absorbent material, a lid. Keep it away from food prep areas. Wash hands with treated water or sanitizer. If sanitizer runs out, soap and even small amounts of clean water beat nothing. If you get a cut, clean it right away. Infections that were annoying before can turn into a disaster now. On the medical side, I keep it practical because I am not a doctor. But I have seen enough facility incidents to know what kills people in the gap between normal life and help. Bleeding, dehydration, infection, and cold. If someone is bleeding, direct pressure with clean cloth. If the cloth soaks, add more on top. Do not peel it away and restart. If someone has a deep wound, keep it covered and get help if help exists. If someone is in shock, keep him warm and flat. Do not force water if he cannot swallow. If someone has chest pain, do not walk it off. If you have aspirin and no contraindication, that might matter, but use judgment and do not take medical advice from random voices without context. I tell parents something simple. Kids feed off adult behavior. If you act frantic, the kid will spiral. Give the kid tasks. Fill bottles. Count candles. Hold a flashlight. Keep the kid away from the radio arguments. Sleep matters, even short sleep. I say if you have a baby, formula becomes gold, clean water becomes non-negotiable, and heating a room safely becomes a priority because infants lose heat fast. Then I address the thing nobody wants to talk about, but everyone is thinking, security. I tell listeners to stop fantasizing about being a lone hero. Most violence and collapses is not a movie raid. It is a bad argument that turns physical. It is a desperate person pushing too far. It is a misunderstanding in the dark. The best security is being boring and connected. Keep lights low at night. Cover windows. Do not advertise supplies. Coordinate with neighbors you already know, the ones you have seen for years. Set quiet check-ins. Not a militia, not a patrol with attitude. Just people making sure the street stays calm. If someone unknown comes asking for help, do not open the door wide. Talk through a barrier. Keep distance. Decide with your household what you can share and what you cannot. I warn about scams because every crisis spawns predators. If someone claims to be a utility worker demanding cash, that is a red flag. If someone claims to be with the government and wants you to leave your home immediately with your valuables, that is a red flag. If an automated voice tells you to drive to a relief point and it cannot be confirmed by any other source, that might be bait. I say the attackers already proved screens can lie. Do not walk into a trap because a text sounded official. Confirm with a live human voice from a known local source when possible. I also talk to infrastructure workers directly because I know some are listening. If you work in a plant, a substation, a dam, a hospital facility team, treat every remote command as suspicious until proven otherwise. Cut external access if you can. Run in local mode. Preserve logs on paper if digital storage is untrusted. Use walkdowns. Put eyes on valves. Put hands on breakers. Put a person in the room with the equipment. Automation is great until the automation is the enemy. A man breaks in on the air, angry, saying I am fear-mongering and everything will be back tomorrow because they would never let it stay broken. I push back hard, because that belief kills people. I tell him nobody lets complex systems recover. Recovery is work. Work requires coordination, trust, and rest. If the attack is still active, defenders will move slower. If the supply chain is broken, repairs will move slower. If workers are home protecting families, repairs will move slower. Believing in rescue does not create rescue. Preparation does. I tell people to plan for movement only if movement improves odds. Do not drive around all day hunting for gas. That wastes fuel and puts you in contact with angry strangers. Move early if you live in a high-risk zone, floodplain, industrial corridor, high-rise with no stairs access, medically fragile situation that needs stable power. If you decide to move, go light. Water, meds, documents, basic tools, warm layers. Tell someone where you are going if you can. Paper map. A full tank matters more than a trunk full of random stuff. Then I get into communication, because this is a radio story, and I cannot resist giving people something actionable. I say, keep at least one battery radio in the house and do not burn through the batteries on volume. Low volume still works. If you have handheld radios, set a neighborhood check-in time, short and predictable, so you are not transmitting all day. Keep messages simple: who, where, what you need, what you can offer, and then clear the channel. If you can write things down, write them down. In chaos, memory lies to you. Stress edits your mind. Paper does not. I take a breath, and I say the other thing. Do not underestimate basic kindness, but do not confuse kindness with surrendering your safety. Share information. Share small amounts of water if you can. Help someone move a disabled car out of an intersection. Check on the elderly neighbor. That prevents deaths that spiral into more. Panic. At the same time, do not open your home to strangers you cannot vet when services are down. You can help from a distance. You can help without becoming a target. Luis leans over and whispers that his kid finally fell asleep. His wife is sitting in the hallway with the kid, away from windows because she heard about break-ins 2 streets over. My sister is on the couch with a backpack under her feet, boots on, ready to move if there is banging at the door. This is what life becomes. Not constant screaming, just constant readiness. I go back on the air and talk about mental survival without sounding soft. I say exhaustion makes people stupid. Sleep is a resource. If you can, rotate rest. 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever you can manage. Eat something even if you do not feel hungry. Drink water on schedule, not just when thirsty. Thirst comes late. If you feel your temper rising, step away before you start a fight you cannot undo. I say people keep dying because someone wanted to be right, more than someone wanted to be alive. I also tell people to accept that the first week is not the same as the first month. In the first week, you live off what exists. In the first month, you start rebuilding routines. Water collection, cooking without grid power, hygiene without running water. A barter of skills, not just supplies. The guy who can safely cut firewood and keep a stove vented matters. The woman who knows how to manage medications matters. The neighbor who can fix a bicycle matters when gas is gone. I say stop thinking only in objects. Think in skills and trust. Another caller asks me if I have any final advice. And that question hits hard because it assumes final. I challenge it. I tell him do not decide it is final. Decide it is hard. Decide it is long. Final thinking makes you reckless. Long thinking makes you careful. I tell him the goal is not to win the apocalypse in a day. The goal is to avoid stupid deaths and stay functional long enough for systems to restart under human control. I say one more practical thing that I learned from my own world. If you run equipment, write down maintenance. Generators need oil checks. Fuel needs treatment if it sits. Filters clog. Batteries degrade. If you have a small generator at home, check the oil every day it runs. Keep spare oil if you can. Do not run it until it dies and then act shocked. Machines do not care about your stress. Machines obey physics. The radio room in this house is just a table by a window. A wire antenna taped where it can reach outside, and a notebook that is already filling with names and places. It feels small compared to the data center, but it also feels more honest. I am not trying to keep the cloud alive now. I am trying to keep humans alive. I finished that night by repeating the core message in the simplest words I can manage. Do not trust remote screens. Trust physical reality. Store water. Avoid fire and fumes. Ration fuel. Sleep in shifts. Verify information. Help neighbors without exposing your home. If you work critical infrastructure, go local and stay local until control is trusted again. If you are just a normal person, your job is not to solve the cyberwar. Your job is to survive it without making it worse. Then I let the channel breathe again, and I listen. I hear a few calm voices, a few broken voices, and a lot of people trying to sound calm and failing. The signal fades in and out, sometimes clear, sometimes swallowed by static. I do not narrate it as destiny. It is just the physics of distance and interference. I sit there in the dim room, head buzzing from lack of sleep, and I keep the notebook open. If I can still hear someone, I write down what he says. If I can still talk, I will answer. That is my job now, because the fancy systems are gone and the simple ones are all we have.